Alright, I'm going to start by announcing that the problem on my machine has been solved. Alright, the culprit ended up being the actuator, okay? Particularly the speed sensing function on the actuator. So, problem solved, machine is okay. Let me go ahead and tell you how I went about coming to that conclusion, okay? Well, to talk about that, I must tell you one observation I made during the course of this troubleshooting. The observation was there is a class of problems that are very unique in their own right. What makes them unique is the fact that they're not addressed by the service manual, okay? Now, having said that, the first error code was F71, which meant basket speed sensor fault, right? They tell you as literally as they could, there is a speed sensor fault. So what would a normal person do? They would just go ahead, purchase a new actuator, put it in the machine, problem solved, right? Now, the question I had was, okay, if the speed sensor is at fault, there must be a test I can do to verify whether the speed sensor was indeed at fault. There was a test that we can do actually. In the manual test, they have what is called a tachometer test. So I went ahead and did a tachometer test and my machine passed, okay? All you have to do is get into the diagnostics mode. Once you are in here, you want to get into the tachometer test mode. And the tachometer test mode is when you have just the wash and the done LEDs on. And for that, I'm going to advance the knob until I have those two LEDs on, like that. Once you have the wash and the done LEDs on, you press the start button. You are now in the tachometer test mode. To start the tachometer test, all you have to do is manually turn the basket, okay? And as the basket turns, you pay attention to the wash status LEDs, and they should be flashing one after the other, just like that. There you go. Basket turns, the lights flash. When the basket comes to a stop, the flashing will stop as well. And what that means is the speed sensor on this washing machine is working as expected. Alright, so there is your contradiction. Contradiction because F71 meant speed sensor fault. Okay, when I did a tachometer test, the speed sensor passed. Alright, contradiction. Not to mention, in the manual, after they told you F7E1 is a basket speed sensor fault, they didn't tell you right then and there to go ahead and change the actuator. No, they didn't. Actually, they listed a number of tests you can do. We ended up on a dead end, alright? So let's go ahead to the second error code. It's F7E7, which meant motor unable to reach target RPM. That also took us to a dead end, remember? So the point I'm trying to make is you might have some problems on your machine which you cannot solve 100% using the information you get from the service manual. Looking at F7E1 and F7E7 and trying to make sense out of them, something hit me. They both dealt with the speed of the basket. They have that theme in common. Okay, they also happened when the basket was starting to spin and when it was trying to decelerate. Okay, I was like, okay, despite the contradiction, the speed sensing function on the actuator is not working optimally. Now, to get to this conclusion, I also used the method of elimination. All right, there are a few parts on this machine, right? For example, let's start with the motor. Is my motor bad? My motor could not possibly be bad because it did spinning and it did agitation. Okay, so my motor is okay. If my motor is okay, how about my capacitor? Well, my capacitor must be okay too because my motor did spinning and it did agitation. If the capacitor was bad, it could not spin, it could not do agitation. So my capacitor could not possibly be the problem. Alright, how about the actuator? Well, the fact that the machine can spin and can agitate means that half of the actuator works. The actuator has two functions, right? The switching function and the speed sensing function. The switching function does not have any problem. Alright, what else do we have on the machine? The drain pump. The drain pump is not cause for concern at this point because our error codes don't deal with the drain pump, and we have done a manual testing of the drain pump and it worked just fine. So the drain pump is out of question. So that leaves us with just one problem, and that is the speed sensing function on the actuator. So using both systems, by the elimination and by our first method, you can see how the speed sensing function on the actuator, and therefore the whole actuator, is at fault. And that's exactly how I approached the problem. The actuator was at fault, machine's problem solved, it's working like brand new right now.